Welcome to the Intentionist Podcast, where we explore the interplay between intuition, spiritual health, and everything in between. I'm your host, Amy Schreiber.
And I'm Hillary Zwallen. Our intention is to create a dialogue that inspires you to consciously forge your path with curiosity and compassion for life and its mysteries.
Hello, everyone. Today, Sarah Kay Hoffman joins Hillary to discuss the life-death-rebirth cycles that occur across our different life stages, especially focusing on being intentional with endings so that there is space for new phases to begin. Sarah shares her personal journey through colitis, infertility, foster adoption, and building and releasing businesses, which has given her some hard-won wisdom on letting go, courage to discuss sensitive topics openly, and self-acceptance. They discuss practical ways to honor the season you're in, seeking help, therapy, the importance of non-dietary lifestyle habits while healing, and they close out the episode with thoughts on simplifying life, disengaging from the noise on social media, and defining authentic success for yourself. Having struggled with digestive issues myself, I found this episode really helpful, and Sarah's personal stories contained inspiring levels of both self-acceptance, like allowing things and feelings to be what they are and giving yourself permission to honor them, but also really powerful action. She's a beautiful example of taking radical personal responsibility for life situations. So a little more about Sarah. She is a wellness expert specializing in food allergies and intolerances, digestive health, and women's issues. She's a certified health coach from the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and works with natural food and lifestyle brands on content creation and helping brands tell their stories digitally. Readers can follow along for stories and encouragement relating to gut health, infertility, and motherhood via adoption to inspire their own journey through her blog and social media platforms. Southern Minnesota is home to Sarah, her husband, and 3 children. And her website is sarahkayhoffman.com, Sarah with an H, Kayhoffman. And she's on Instagram also as Sarah Kay Hoffman and as a Gutsy Girl. And you can find her on Facebook as a Gutsy Girl blog and Pinterest as Sarah Kay Hoffman as well. Enjoy the episode.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited to have you on here. I was actually reflecting on how long we've known each other and where in our lives we were when we met. I was thinking we met at a Tech Munch. Was like a blogging conference. And I just have a memory of you of being like, I sat next to you and you were so pretty and you were just like typing away, like at the speed of light on your tweet deck. And I was like, this chick means business. So I wanted you to talk to our listeners a little bit about when I think of someone who has just like tons of energy and who your content output is like next level. So why don't you talk a little bit about your professional journey and also your health journey, just so our listeners have some context as to who you are and what you're about.
Yeah, because they really are 2 journeys, 2 very distinct journeys. However, I was thinking about that too, and they really kind of go hand in hand, which if you think about it, when you're doing something that you don't love or you're stuck anywhere that doesn't make you happy, whether that's a relationship or a job or whatever, you can see how illness can come about from that. So I graduated from the University of Minnesota with a marketing and a communications major. So right out of college, I did, what everyone seems to do. I just took the first thing that came and I worked for a division of News Corporation. Every single day, I was living in LA at the time and wearing a 3-piece suit and super miserable. And I kept doing that. And I feel like I got good experience there and I learned a lot, but I definitely was not very happy. So shortly after I moved out to LA, I kind of re-met my husband again and I moved back to Minnesota. And long story short, shortly before we got engaged, the two of us moved back to California, to the Bay Area, which is where I would ultimately meet you, Hillary. Mm-hmm. And I kind of stayed stuck in this cycle of not knowing what I wanted to do from a career standpoint for several years. I remember one day I just got so fed up with feeling miserable and dreading going to work every day. And at this time, I was already pretty sick. I had gotten my stomach issues kept getting worse and worse, and doctors didn't know what was going on. And yeah, I had just had it. So I remember it was right before our wedding. I quit my job and I just went to go work at a health and fitness club in the Bay Area, and I absolutely loved it. I spent the next couple of years just like kind of doing my thing and finding my way and figuring out what I wanted to do. And right around then, this was in 2008, I actually had a colonoscopy and endoscopy finally. And when I had that done, the doctors diagnosed me with colitis. And so that's kind of where my journey, my entire journey started, was when I got that diagnosis. Because with the diagnosis, they gave me some different drugs that my body really did not respond well to. And I knew that there had to be a better way for healing and for feeling better, because by the way, even with the drugs, I was not feeling well still. So what I did was I kept working at the gym, and I also went back to school. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition to learn more about food and lifestyle and how it can help us heal and all of that. And also, meanwhile, from a career standpoint, in 2009, I very lucky somehow won this contest with Nike where I did this human ambassador thing in 2009. I was one of 10 chosen in the United States, and it was a digital campaign. And I'd done a lot of marketing and sales, but all traditional. I had never done anything online. And that campaign was all online. I just learned a ton. And through that, that's kind of where my whole inspiration and love for doing all things digital and online and creating content and whatever, that was kind of sparked then. And that was in 2009. So I go back to school, I'm doing this stuff online, I'm kind of starting this journey, and here and there, I was feeling better. I did a bunch of like really, really intense diets to try to heal my gut, and it worked, and then it didn't work, and just a long story, really like long story. But what finally ended up happening is in 2014, was diagnosed with something called SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And it turns out that was pretty much my bottleneck for everything that had been plaguing me for years and years and years. And I actually started my road to real health and to getting better. A couple years before that is when I started A Gutsy Girl, which is my entire website and blog that I built everything on. It's gutsygirl.com.
You blog like very openly about your different digestive issues. And I think that's something that for people who are suffering with digestive issues really appreciate the nitty gritty, because it's something that can carry a lot of shame, or that people don't really want to talk about, or they like think they shouldn't talk about. And I think that you create this really amazing, your website is obviously this incredible resource for people. You share a lot of your own personal experience, but you also give so much information about different ways to approach gut healing. What I wanted to ask you, because you're a part of our series on cycles. And so you're, again, like I mentioned earlier, you have always amazed me at your content output, and you've been through so many big changes in your life with starting a business, which I know you haven't mentioned yet, but we're going to get to your almond butter business called A Loving Spoon. So you had an entrepreneurial, like where you actually had product business, you've had an online business, blogging, client work in the natural food space. And then you've also foster adopted 3 kids. And so I wanted you to segue into, what does it mean for you to do it all, right? Like when I look at you, I think you're a person that does it all, right? And what is that like for you? What are the ups and downs of that? Where have you struggled with that?
Well, I think it's exhausting. I mean, I don't think that there's any use in pretending that when we say we do it all, that we do it all with ease and that everything just comes naturally and that it's this big, beautiful, you know, painting of
Instagram shot.
an Instagram shot. I mean, because it's definitely not. You know, a lot of the things that I've started from a business standpoint have definitely not been successful. You know, I think that my greatest success has been adopting the 3 children because they came from a very, very, very hard death cycle for me, which was also how a Gutsy Girl began, which is when you find out that you can't have the children on your own, you know? So I do think that the children are probably my greatest success. But yeah, I mean,
talk to me a little bit about that process of your fertility. Like you said, you had stomach issues, but where it really started showing up for you in terms of, I mean, not obviously just health with your guts, but like fertility, right? So talk to me about that, because I think there are so many women that suffer with that, and it is such a hard thing, fertility.
right. And I'm still technically in that bucket that it's completely unexplained, which I think is very, very difficult for many women to accept. And it probably would have been for me as well, but just the way things have turned out, it's not been anymore. So, you know, obviously we were married in 2008 and I'm so type A, obviously. You can't like run 7 million things and not be type A, I don't think. But I'm so type A that it was supposed to be, you know, we're going to get married and we're going to have a fun year-ish together. And then we're going to get pregnant. We're going to have 1 baby. And then a couple years later is going to be 2. And, you know, we're going to do the whole like perfectly planned life. But in 2010, when we realized that wasn't happening, then we started to look into all the fertility treatments, and we went through all of them. I think we probably did 3 or 4 inseminations, and then the culmination of an IVF cycle, which, if anyone has ever gone through it can be very vicious. And for me, with all of my other health issues, it was a very vicious cycle that did not end well. But it ended in 2012 when the IVF was not successful. And it was like maybe a week later when a Gutsy Girl was born, because I wanted to share the story about, you know, these faux pas topics that women just don't ever talk about, which is the gut and infertility, and both of which I had. And so it was, you know, I remember the thing that my husband and I did that I would just tell, like, it's probably my greatest recommendation for anyone that has had that loss of like trying and being unsuccessful, and then going through the culmination of an IVF cycle and still being unsuccessful, is you have to just go away and get away from it all. And so what my husband and I did is we went to Sedona, and I will never forget it because it was like this life-changing, I don't think like 3 or 4 days. I mean, Sedona is such a like incredible place from like a spiritual standpoint, and like just very like earthy and just really calm. And I loved it. But when we were there, I just realized that like, there's just gotta be something more. And I knew deep down that probably like having children on our own was not going to be what it was for us. And I just let it all kind of go. And that was the end. I mean, I think like, I can't tell you how many times like we cried. And I remember I saw an interview, Juliana Rancic also had a failed IVF cycle around the same time. And I remember I watched an interview, and she was asked what her husband does, you know, or how he consoles her, or whatever. And she said, he doesn't, he just lets me cry, and that's okay. And that's like really what happened. I just cried, and it was okay. And then it was like, but something else is out there. Like, this is okay.
Sarah, thank you so much for sharing that. I wanted to ask you, you know, like you had mentioned fertility and the gut are these things that there's almost, I don't want to say a shame, but there's some sort of societal silencing, right? Like as women, we're afraid to talk about these things. Like, it's so close to the vest. When is it ready? Miscarriages, whatever it is around that, where it's like on some level, we feel like we're broken. We're not doing what it should be doing. What was it like harnessing the bravery to be able to speak about it publicly, and to be like, to me, I see you as such an advocate for foster adoption, and you're so open with those very raw struggles. How did you find the bravery in all of that?
I don't actually know, because I am I'm a very like introverted person. And so I think what happened was because well, first of all, I had to talk to my husband about it to make sure like this is okay that we like put our entire lives out on the internet.
Yes.
Because, once it's out there, it's out for good. I mean, I also had to like keep in mind like my mom and dad like reading this and knowing that like their friends would read it and whatever. So I did feel a sense of like, should I not be doing this? I actually think that a lot of times when I write things. In fact, even today when I write certain things about foster adoption, about the kids, I have to have my husband read it before I publish this because I'm always afraid of it. But I think what it came down to was I wrote a blog post called "This is Who I Am." And that is what it comes down to. It's like, this is who I am. And there's nothing wrong with being quote unquote infertile. There's nothing wrong with having these stomach issues. And the more that women feel shame about talking about things like that I feel like the more women like sit in like with their anxieties and their insecurities and their like depression, and
it really perpetuates the cycle is what it does, right?
Exactly.
And you had that moment, like you said, where you're sitting in Sedona and you're crying and you're recognizing that this is the end of something. And then what comes after that realization is the beginning of the next thing. So will you talk a little bit about that?
Right. So, I mean, in fact, the blog post is called "The End of This Road, the Beginning of a Gutsy Girl." Like literally that's what I titled it, because it was the end of something in so many ways in my life. I feel like looking back, like I just see that weekend in Sedona. It was the end of, feeling sad or feeling like poor me because we can't have kids, or just, it was the end of a lot. But it was this awesome beginning, because I can remember writing that blog post and I was like, I am going to write about gutsy topics. I am going to write about and tell my story. And by the way, I'm not just going to write about it. I'm going to start living it, because then, we had to, I couldn't just write about being gutsy. I had to actually do it. So we had to start looking into how are we going to have children? We had to take those first steps at considering foster adoption or because we actually first considered adopting overseas, and we had to take those steps. And then from a health standpoint, I had to take the steps of, okay, if I'm going to be gutsy and not just going to like do everything the doctors tell me, how am I going to heal my gut with food and lifestyle versus drugs and medication? So it was definitely a pivotal point.
It's such a unique thing. Like you said, like sometimes these death cycles come to an abrupt ending. Like you're talking about being in Sedona and you're like, it hit us. You were in this kind of spiritual vortexy place and you were there with the open heart of like receiving an answer that maybe you wouldn't have wanted to hear 6 months before. But when you allowed that to internalize in your body, then you literally birthed a blog that has been going for now, 10 years almost. It's almost 10 years. And through that, you have talked about, and obviously throughout that time, you now have 3 children that are so cute. And so I just wanted to presence that when I'm looking at what you're talking about in terms of cycles, which is our topic today. I just think there's something about allowing the end of something, and you really ritualized it with this trip, right? Like you there was like a moment at this trip, right? You're like you keep referring to like in Sedona, like this happened. It's like you have that to represent the ending of that era, and you knew exactly when the new beginning happened. And I just think that's really beautiful. So thank you so much for sharing that. Talk to me a little bit about what came next.
So, I think it was, since that was 2012 and that was in, I think, March or April, we got back from Sedona, and honestly, like, I would love to say that I was like this hero in like trying to make things happen on my own, but I didn't. It was my husband that did. He started to email. I don't know. Somehow we just decided that adoption was going to be for us. I mean, it's weird. I don't even think that we ever had this big, long conversation about like, is this what we're going to do? We knew for sure that we were not going to do another IVF cycle. We knew all that, but I don't know. We just started researching it. And so, yeah, my husband really did everything. We realized pretty early on that we weren't going to do overseas. We were kind of hoping to adopt either from Chile or like Vietnam, but they weren't really viable options. So my husband just contacted the state of California in our county and asked what we needed to do. And I mean, it was probably within a month or two. I remember sitting in orientation, just kind of learning about the ins and outs of the foster care system and what we would need to do in order to get licensed. So then by early that summer, we did foster care classes all summer long. And by the end of 2013, then we were all ready to go. And from the end of August of 2013 until we got the call for our first baby, we just kind of sat and waited and
it was pretty quick, right? For Samara to come into your life. How long was from the time you started your classes until she was placed with you initially? I know it took a while for the adoption to be finalized, but from the time you met Samara, or from the time you do your orientation to the time you met Samara, how long did that take?
So yeah, it was in June of 2013 that we started classes. Mm-hmm. We ended classes in August and we got the call for her in November. So yeah, I mean, relatively, it was pretty short time. I mean, when you're in the thick of it though, it seems like forever. It's like the 9-month wait, but oh my gosh. I mean, I would imagine it's like the 9-month wait. I don't know, but it felt like forever.
I remember that day when you got her. I remember that. That's such a neat story and such a neat time. So let's talk. I just wanted to, because we're kind of short on time here and there's so much I want to cover with you. So you have a new baby that you've adopted, one of the cutest babies I've ever seen in my whole life. And you're running a Gutsy Girl and you decide to start a loving spoon. Why don't you talk about a loving spoon for a second?
Okay, so a loving spoon, it's so sad because I just feel like with the loving spoon, it was all timing. Yeah. The timing just was not right because I still believe in everything that the company did and why I started it. But I remember it was a couple months before we got Samara and I was like, should I do this? Should I not? And my husband just kept saying, yes, we don't know when we're going to get a baby. You have to start if you're going to go for it. There's timing's never going to be right. So I did go for it. But what a loving spoon was a loving spoon nut butters. And I had a honey vanilla bourbon peanut butter and we had a honey roasted peanut butter and a couple almond butters, a Java almond chip and a sea salted almond. And I love them. But what a loving spoon really was born from was when I was doing some intense gut healing in 2009, I still wanted dessert every night. And so I started making these dessert nut butters and I was feeling better and I was healing, but yet every single night I would be like spoonful after spoonful digging into my homemade nut butters, especially the honey vanilla bourbon peanut butter, which kind of became the signature one. I think your favorite was the Java almond chip though, Hillary.
I liked both, but yes, I had a lot of the Java almond. I bought like a bulk order because I was like, I need a lot of these. Yeah. When they first came out.
But yeah, so I just really wanted like this better alternative for like snack and dessert for people that had IBS and IBD than what I thought was on the market. And so I just kind of went all in on it. I called it a loving spoon nut butters. And they were just these little 4-ounce jars that were, they were supposed to be very portable so that people could have them on the go. So shortly before we got Samara, I started, I got the jars, I got a commercial kitchen. My commercial kitchen was about an hour and a half from where we lived, but I would go there, produce them. I won a Whole Foods grant. I mean, I don't know. I just kept going and doing things. And I went to Williams-Sonoma events. I went to events in San Francisco. I primarily had an e-business. So everything was on alovingspoon.com, which it's not even up anymore. So the business isn't any longer. But yeah, I mean,
and you were selling it at grocery stores in Livermore, right? They were in certain.
Yep.
I loved your product, but I think this is the reason I really wanted to talk about A Loving Spoon is because I think of all the women out there who are juggling everything, and they're juggling, like you said, babies. And I was a business owner for a long time, and I know how hard that can be. And there are just moments in your life where sometimes you have to let things go, even though you see that there's like possibilities. You're looking at what you're trying to juggle, and there's just a time where you go like, what can I afford to let go of, because there's only so many hours in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I relapsed. All my illnesses relapsed in 2014. We got Samara in November of 2013. And by that next spring in 2014, I had relapsed. I was so sick. Because she was so prematurely born, and she had to be up every 2 hours to feed. And then on the weekends, I would be going to my commercial kitchen. I would leave at like 3 a.m. And I was physically sick. I was emotionally drained because meanwhile, in the back of my head, I had been thinking like, what if this baby gets taken? And, I'm here like churning nut butters. And so it was one of those things where I was just going and going, and I couldn't go anymore.
Yeah. I think that's like your wise woman speaking, right? Because we can just run ourselves into the ground. And where do you think that internal pressure came from? Is it like your internal drive? Is it societal? Is it just like that shock of having a child and having not had a child before, and how all encompassing that is, especially that first one? I think with my first one, I stayed home with him for 2.5 years. And I kept thinking to myself, like, how does anyone do anything other than this? Because it was so hard for me just to like take a shower during those first few months. Like it was just mind blowing.
I think the reason I wanted to keep going with A Loving Spoon though, is because before we got the baby, everyone kept telling me like, you're never going to be able to do it all. It's so exhausting. Like the baby's the only thing you're going to be able to do. You're going to need to sleep when the baby sleeps. You got to eat when the baby sleeps, on and on and on. And so I think in my mind, because I'm so like driven to do things that people tell me I can't do, I wanted to keep going. So I did keep going. And even before, like shortly before I shut the business down, I applied for Shark Tank, and I got a call back. I applied for a Whole Foods grant, which I was granted, and then Whole Foods wanted the product. And so I just kept telling myself that I could do it all, and that I was really out to prove everyone wrong.
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting place to come from, right? I get that. I have that same like competitive spirit within me too, where it's like, oh, you're not going to tell me what I can or can't do, like society / anyone else, but yeah, like you said, where did the realization come? Where did that inner wisdom come in and say, excuse me?
I mean, honestly, like I think it was on one of my 3 a.m. drives to my commercial kitchen one day. And I was doing every single piece of the business. And what I realized was at the same time, Whole Foods was telling me, that in order to go on our shelves, you need to be distributed by their largest distributor, UNFI. And what that means is you have to basically put up a lot of money. And so I just came to this fork in the road that said, you either go all in, and by all in, that would mean like financially, like everything on the line, get this product produced, try to make it huge, or you back out and just like chalk it up to a great experience, shelf it, the name for maybe later, but just kind of bow out. And because I was so sick at the time, I just knew that it wasn't, and that we had a baby, I was not really
Not to mention during this time, you had adopted, or you were in the process of adopting another child.
Exactly.
Talk about that experience, like what happened with your family, like the family growth that was happening concurrently with this, because I think this is an important thing for women, especially driven women like you and like me, when you're in this, like when you're shifting from being single to married and then having your family, there's a different energy that you have to approach life with. Yeah. And it's not just in like energetic output. It's almost like an archetypal quality, right? Like we go from being the maiden to the mother, and there's a different quality to being the mother. And it happens again as we age and we move from the mother to the crone, right? And we move into that wise woman in menopause or whatever. It's like, there is something about that I think we tend to just want to breeze right through. Like, I'm the same person I was when I was single. And it's like, wait a second, hold up. So anyway.
Yeah, you're not the same person. I mean, you are. I don't ever think I've like changed as a person, but the people that need you and the things that are important to you change. Mm-hmm. And so I could either really hustle this business and really like put it all on the line there financially, or we could do like what I really wanted for that time and for our whole life, which was to build this family and to just like be present in that season. I tried to mix like these really three intense business, family, and health seasons into one, and it just didn't work. But yeah, so Isaiah, our next baby, wasn't born until 2016. But you know, from the time that we got Samara until we got Isaiah, it was a really stressful time for us because her finalization took almost 2 years, and it was really stressful.
You also got Samara as a brand new baby from the hospital, which is fairly uncommon, right, for foster adoption?
It's very uncommon. And if it does happen, usually then you do have a pretty stressful wait, and because they have to like check through everybody's like both, you know, birth mom, birth dad, their families, their extended families, to see like who could take the baby, because the state's number one goal is to reunify. They want the child to go back to, you know, any biological family. So that's what we dealt with for 2 years. And I felt like every day I was like on pins and needles thinking that someone from the state was going to take my baby. But yeah, so her adoption finalized, and like right when it finalized, I remember we yet again took another one of those kind of pivotal family vacations. We went to Hawaii, the three of us at the time. And it was then when we were like, we were ready for more. And when we were in Hawaii, we got the call that we were going to start the process for baby number 2. And that was in summer of 2015, or maybe it was summer of 2016. I don't really remember, but it was not long after. And then he came to us as well.
And then
he came to us, and we only had him for 3 months before he was fully adopted. It was probably the fastest adoption in the entire state of California. And before he was even adopted, we found out that he had a biological sister who was born, and we ended up getting our third child. So we ended up with 3 children, adopting 3 in 3 years.
So you had 3 under 3. Running an almond butter business, a blog, and you had clients at the time too. I mean, that was, I was amazed at all the shifts and changes that you went through. Really amazing.
I actually stopped A Loving Spoon shortly before Isaiah came, the son, because I had to let go of something. But to your point, I still was doing everything else. Yes.
Yeah. So then where are you at now? Like looking at, you know, I think of these life cycles, right? Life, death, rebirth cycles. And I've really come to view the birthing process and the death process as there may be a moment like you're talking about in Sedona where you're like, we realized that it was over. But there's like all this time that happens where like, I think, you know, when you think of even human birth, right? We have 9 months where there's a baby in the womb that's growing, and then the baby's born, and the baby still, for me, I always felt like when my kids were born, they were still like not totally here yet. Like they were kind of here and there, you know, like when they're brand new, it's like, are they even in there? Like, where are they? Right. And I've heard the same thing with death, right? Like there's sometimes it's it's a process, right? It's a process. And so as you moved firmly into your mother phase and you settled into that, where are you at now in terms of your views on work and parenting and, creating space?
So I am still trying to find all that. I'm still trying to find my cadence with work and balance and motherhood, but I don't have my business anymore. And what I do now is I do 100% consulting in the natural foods industry, creating content for them. And what I love about that, and what I love about that space that I've created for myself, is that I don't ever physically have to go anywhere or completely be, at an office or, away from the kids from 9 to 5 every day. Mm-hmm. And I can be present for the things that they need and for the different challenges that the children might have and the different appointments and just the little things. I am still able to be there for, because I don't have to go anywhere. But having said that, that one way that I'm able to still run my blog is I do technically work, 40 or 50 hours a week, billable hours that I am working with clients. The only way to do it is to make the decision to have the kids go to daycare, to have someone help me do other things on my business. I definitely, one mistake that I think I made many years ago is that I didn't ever get help and I didn't ask for help. Moving back to Minnesota with our family, like we have our family here to help us. But when we lived in California, I could have easily asked for more help from people. I could have hired someone to help me with my blog, and I didn't make those decisions. And I finally did once we moved back to Minnesota, and it has completely changed the space and the sense of calm that I feel like I have. And I feel like with that extra space, it's allowed me more a sense of calm when I'm with my kids. I think it also allows for growth with the kids, growth with new business opportunities, just growth all around. So
I love that concept of asking for help. I think I remember, when was it? I was probably in White Plum. I was in business the second year I was in business. I went to Alt Summit, and Martha Stewart was the keynote at Alt Summit in Salt Lake City. And everyone was like, how do you do it? How do you do it all? And she kind of was like, she's got her brand of of course I do it all. But she was kind of like, I don't do it all, guys. I have a big, huge team of people. You know what I'm saying? Where it's and the fact that this whole audience full of people, and maybe not everyone believed this, but there was definitely a sentiment of how do I get to be like Martha Stewart? It's girl, you ask for help. You get help to do everything. You outsource everything. And I feel like this is one of those things where I'm even learning this now, stepping back into business for the second time. When I see myself at White Plum, I think in my mind, I felt like I always had to, if I wasn't heavily involved in the details, then it wasn't functioning. And I felt and that's not always true, but I created that system to be that way. I created that things didn't work unless I was totally involved. And I'm just now going, as I'm kind of peeling away my own layers, I'm wow, this next go round, I really want to be better at empowering my employees or empowering my community, empowering people around me to rise to the occasion, to find out ways to make things work where I'm not the one coming up with the solutions, because that will kill you, right? It literally will make your stomach sick, and it will drive you crazy, and it will make your hair fall out, and it will make you, all kinds of things that I think I've suffered with, that you've suffered with. I feel ya. So let's just really quick, I want to talk about a couple of gut healing questions, because you're my go-to gut healing expert. Mm-hmm. In your mind, how do you befriend your body while healing? Because your digestive system is so interconnected with that nervous system and the emotions. I find even with myself and my own celiac SIBO that I'm dealing with, I have to really stop that negative voice that's your freaking body, why won't it do what you want it to do? Talk to me about what you do because
well, I mean, so like for me, like it really started with infertility, you know, it's like, why won't you do what you were made to do for me, you know? And I had to learn and process through that whole thing. And so the first thing that I say, this is what I always tell women, is unbutton those pants. So it sounds so like weird, but this is what would happen to me and what I've heard happens to so many women. Your stomach hurts. You physically don't feel like yourself. You feel, you feel off, you feel rotten, you want to cry, and you can just feel it in your stomach. And sometimes like it's a metaphor, but it also, it's real. Like sometimes you do need to unbutton your pants because your stomach is so bloated and it hurts if you have SIBO, but it's also a metaphor. It's like, release it. Let it all go. I can't even tell you how many times I cried and cried because I was so fed up with how much my stomach hurt and how bloated I was, when I could just feel the SIBO like, just sitting in my upper stomach, and it hurts. And I wouldn't want to go anywhere with my husband. I wouldn't want to do anything. And it's like one of those things that you can't explain to anybody unless you've been there and done that. But I just say unbutton those pants. Like, you just have to let it all go. Like there's no right or wrong way to feel to deal with it, but whatever works best for you. So for me, a lot of like crying, a lot of deep breaths really, really helps. For me, honestly, like if I get a really good night of sleep, my stomach will feel so much better. As much as I hate to admit it because I don't like to do it, but drinking a lot of water does work. Not over exercising. So my favorite thing to do is to long distance run, but long distance running does not like me. And it usually does not like anybody that has IBS and or IBD. So I had to like really teach myself to just chill out. And that's kind of been life-changing. So those are some of the major things. Obviously, diet, but that's like such an easy, like almost like low-hanging fruit now. I mean, it's like everyone, especially if you're like really good at following a plan, which I am, like a diet is probably the easiest part. It's everything else that people forget about, the lifestyle part of it that will help you or really hurt you.
Yes. All that resonates. I think that is such great advice, Sarah. I'm literally writing it down as we're talking. I'm like, yes, crying. Okay, check.
I can't tell you how many times I had to learn the hard way though, that like, it wasn't just about diet. I wrote a blog post called Dieting Harder. Dieting Harder. And it's basically like, you can't diet harder. I mean, there's no way to diet more than doing like a paleo, AIP, GAPS, SCD. I mean, there's absolutely
I feel
nothing.
the same way. I'm just like, I eat healthier than anyone I know. And I'm like still suffering. And I think you're right. What it is it's like that sleep. And something I've been discovering for myself that I'd love to add to your wisdom is because I work with a shamanic teacher through this practitioner training I've been doing. That stomach area is your third chakra. It's your identity. It's your fear. It's your power. It's where everything is located. And she would help me to think of it in terms of meditation. When you meditate, to really envision like what is in there that's stuck, like what energetically, what are the things that you're holding on to? What are the beliefs that you're holding on to? What can you, like you were saying, let it go? And so I think sometimes that's really hard to do. It's like, let it go. Of course, when you're in like an anxious spiral, or you feel like you're buried in a mountain of, chaos that you've created for yourself, to take that moment of silence and really visualize what your energetic body looks like and what does that region look like, and where are some of the nuggets that you can extract and release. And
I love that. I think that's perfect. And along with that too, I know that this has helped me personally, and this is something else women don't want to talk about and they don't want to admit that they do, but I am telling you, it can change everything about your health and your life is therapy. And that's part of right in the middle there. Like, by the way, that third thing is just, that's what we refer to as like your gut feeling, your gut intuition, your gut instinct. That's what that is. Like that, those things that you feel all the time, that's real. That's like a really real thing. But in there, like deep in there, like there's so many things that like need to be like erupted and to come out, and things that like you may have been holding since you were 5 years old and you don't even know about it, but you can't let it all go if you don't like get it all out and talk to somebody.
If you don't recognize that it's even there, right? If you've just stuffed it down forever.
Right.
So talk to me, as we kind of wrap this up, a little bit about less and space. So I've talked, you and I were talking when we were setting this interview up about, you know, the two words you've kind of been bringing into your awareness, and you were saying less and space. So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yes, I've been meditating so much on these two words, and honestly, I don't have all the answers yet. I just know that they're going to be my main focus heading into 2019, and just really, really, really honing in on them and embracing them and like living by them. So I have this thing where I really want, like, I'm trying to have less in my life, because I think that the less that we have, you know, the less clutter, the less stuff. I mean, even like less friendships, less, you know, like
purging the toxicity for sure.
Yeah. Like less of everything, both physical and emotional. The more that we are able to like actually breathe more and live more and like have a more meaningful life. I read this amazing book. I think it's called The Art of Declutter or something like that, by Terry Savelle, I think is her last name. But it really has started to change my life, because it's all about just like decluttering. And for her, a lot of it was like physical stuff. And she says like, I had to go just like start with my bedroom. I had to start cleaning out my bedroom to realize like all of this stuff is weighing me down, like the physical stuff, the emotional stuff. And like, I'm like reading this book and I'm looking around and I'm like, my bedroom is disgusting. And there's so much clutter and so much stuff that I just need less. And then it just kind of became a trickle effect from there. So I desired like less client load. I didn't want less hours. I just wanted less client load, because what I started to realize was in college, you could take 4 classes or 5 classes, and really it would be a matter of only like to add that 5th class was like a matter of 2 credits. But even though it was only 2 credits, it was an entire other subject matter. And so it became like 4 classes was manageable, but 5 was like completely unmanageable. And so it's that same idea, like 1 extra client, even if it was only 5 extra hours a week, was just an entire other subject matter. So I started letting go of clients. I started reducing the amount of clients I have. And now I'm down to like 1 main one. And I have like another like couple like side ones, but they're just ones I've had for a long time. There's nothing I need to learn extra, down to 1.
So, and it's really about calling in the exact people you want to work with, the exact subject.
Exactly.
It's like manifesting, saying like, I still want this, but I want it to be simpler. And I want to be working with the ones that are the most empowering to my path and what I'm doing. You know, I think one of the lessons I'm learning right now in my life is I'm coming to grips with that midlife, like, oh, this is what life is. It's like working hard, and the accomplishments are like cool, but like, I feel like I've accomplished some good things in my life, and I'm like, it's still really hard. And there's still days that you don't want to get out of bed, or that you just feel bogged down by your emotions or on your to-do list. And I think what I've discovered is it's like, what this is really about are the moments that you create, like sitting and drinking your tea in the morning. Amy and I talk about this on the podcast a lot, or like sitting with your plants, or enjoying time with your children, like really meaningful time, and doing, you're going to work, right? Like, and so doing the work that you want to be doing. And, you know, sometimes it still feels like work, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that. I think it's a very American ideal to think like my life's purpose is what I get paid for. Like sometimes it's okay to just have a job and have a job, right? But really being able to own and manifest what is really in line with who you are with that time that we do have. I love what you said about having more space. I love that, Sarah. That's really resonating with me right now. Yeah.
So I wanted less. And then all of a sudden I had like one day I was like, does this even make sense? Because pretty soon my husband and I are buying a new house that is like really big and has all this space. And it's like, so I'm talking about less, I'm wanting less, I'm desiring less, but then we're doing this over here. And I started to think though that it doesn't matter because space and less, they're not the same things. I want less, but I want this big open space, like you said, like the space for my kids, the space for whatever. Space doesn't have to mean that you're going to fill it. Refill everything with the things that you don't want. So
I love that. That's wisdom right there. Okay. Before we part, I want to just talk one final topic, which kind of harkens to this drumbeat on social media or TV or these societal messages. And we've kind of touched on this already, but this like do it all, I feel like there's a lot of these very clickbaity headlines that we're bogged down with on our devices that are like, make $100,000 in 1 month in these simple ways. Or there's, almost the feeling like everybody has to have a platform or everybody has to be a guru or do you know what I'm saying? There's like this societal thing. And I think it's just this noise. And I'm just feeling like the underlying message for us is that we're internalizing is that we're not enough unless we accomplish, A, B, C, D, right? This is something that I am constantly struggling with and I'm working on reprogramming myself. I mean, what do you think about that? I mean, what's your advice for people who may be dealing with the noise of A, social media, and B, knowing when to deflect that we're not enough message?
Well, first of all, we are enough. Second of all, nobody on social, okay, not nobody, but most of the people that are saying that they are working from the beach in month 1 on their new job, making thousands and thousands every single month, it's not real. And I know it's not real because I'd look at the most like successful people in my life that like are actually successful. And number 1, they are not on social media talking about the fact that they are successful. And number 2,
that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah.
That's the truth. And 2, I know what it took for them to get successful. And I think that that's kind of why I just like have tried to stay really consistent with the things that I'm doing because I know that that's what the most successful people that I look up to have done over the years. They have just kept at it and stayed consistent and not given up when, like they think that they should throw the towel in. I think that it's sad. The other thing is I personally, like if you saw me in my real life, well, you have Hillary, so I just like never like dress a certain way. I never like overdo anything like I'm like killing it, like everyone does on social ever. And I think that in real life, like when you look at people, like that's how you just know that someone can be enough without having to like look or act the part because they're just down there doing the grind every day. They're doing the things that they need to do and they're not being flashy and showing. And the real proof in the pudding is, what does their real life look like? Not what does their Instagram profile look like,
right.
But what does their real life look like? And also I feel like we can get a really good sense of somebody by what are they doing to give back? Like what is their life outside of making thousands and thousands of dollars working from the beach look like,
Right. I mean, what is your, like, what do you want your life to really be about? And I think like, you bring up a great point. And a lot of it's like knowing when to tune out the noise, right? Mm-hmm. Knowing that when you start to hear these voices of insecurity or feeling like you're not doing enough or like your life doesn't look as glamorous as someone else's life, that's the time to turn it off, like power it down, come back to what's real, go back to those places inside of ourselves where we go like, what do I really want my life to be about? I love that, Sarah. Thank you for that. Thank you so much for taking some of your weekend to talk to me. And it's been so fun to catch up with you and talk about your journey. For our listeners, go subscribe to her Gutsy Girl newsletter and also follow her on social media. You have a few different accounts. What are your accounts, Sarah?
So my main one for my personal life, which is all the kids stuff and just kind of like my personal professional life, is just my full name, Sarah Kay Hoffman, and that's on Instagram. And then for A Gutsy Girl, it's just A Gutsy Girl on Instagram. And I use both of them regularly. I love Instagram, but you can find me anywhere at Sarah Kay Hoffman on Instagram, Pinterest, my website.
And your website is sarahkhoffman.com or is it gutsygirl.com?
They both go to the same place.
Oh, perfect. Yes. If you are a person who is struggling with any sort of gut related issue, which I feel like is everyone I talk to, I feel like it's everyone right now, go to her website. She has the most incredible downloads. I have downloaded your Gutsy Girl Bible. I've downloaded your AIP recipe, which is delicious. I have, yes, your products are great. And I always tell her, I'm like, you're not charging enough. And she's like, I'm fine with how you do it. Yeah. Not that I need to tell you how to run your business, but the value is really amazing.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I was just going to say on my website, there's a whole drop down for gut health. So I have been doing it for like 10 years now. So probably any question that you have on IBS or IBD, I have probably written about it. So if you just use the search bar, you can probably find it.
Such a wealth of resources on those topics, Sarah. And thanks so much for sharing your fertility journey and these really big milestones in your life. I really want to acknowledge you for taking a moment and having an honest conversation about it. And I hope for our listeners that you guys can see some element of yourself in the stuff that Sarah has shared today. And with that, thank you. Thank you again. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Hillary.
Before we part, we'd like to say thanks for listening, and we hope you'll connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We would love to hear from you and appreciate all feedback, shares, and likes.
To learn more and subscribe to our newsletter, visit intentionists.com. And no matter where you are or what you're creating, we send you love and invite you to breathe and begin.
See you next week.